Assalamu alaikum. Sorry about that. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to today's Friday Reflections on this Friday, the 8th of April 2022. I hope everybody is well wherever you're tuning into this from, and Ramadan is going well for you. Your fasts are going well for you. Alhamdulillah, we're in a very blessed month of the year for us Muslims, and you know, it's a wonderful time to be able to take some time out to reflect, to think about the religion, to think about what we're doing in our lives and how we are connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, you know, alhamdulillah, I mean, I've been having a very busy week actually, because I've still been working. We've been hosting guests from the Republic of Indonesia. They're senators from the Senate of Indonesia, who we hosted at the University of Birmingham and in London. So we are having a very busy week, but alhamdulillah, we're also spending time, you know, fasting, praying, reflecting. Took some time out with the brother yesterday after the initial event to, you know, just have a chat about Islam and about some things that we should reflect upon, because Ramadan is a time when we should be taking some time out to reflect and think about how we're practicing our religion and what we're doing. We don't always do that necessarily. And it's important because this is how we learn. This is how we come to better understanding of our religion. So today, I would like to read something from this beautiful book, Liberating the Soul, A Guide for Spiritual Growth, Volume 1, by Mawlana Shaykh Nazim. It's a collection of Mawlana Shaykh Nazim's spiritual talks. And I'm going to read from page 178, following the Prophet Sallallahu example. Following the Prophet Muhammad's example, the Sunnah. May Allah make us as He likes, not as we like. And this is the thing with Islam. Islam is, it's about submitting to the will of God. Now, that's kind of archaic way of saying it, but basically, a more modern way would be to bring ourselves in tune with the reality, to bring ourselves in tune with true reality and in tune with the Creator and you could say the consciousness that is behind this universe. I mean, how can we find peace if we do not bring ourselves in tune with the Creator? If we're not in tune, if we're not in harmony with the creation, how can we find peace? How can we find peace in this life? And how can we find peace when we leave this life? A state of dis-ease, actually, dis-ease, not being at ease, not being at peace. It comes from being in disharmony, not being in harmony. If we're not in harmony with reality, then we set ourselves out of balance. And when we set ourselves out of balance, then we get problems. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mawlana Shaykh Nazim began with, may Allah Almighty make us as He likes, not as we like. It is dangerous for a person to be as he likes, but rather he must try to be as his Lord likes. The one who is as his Lord wants him to be is going to be at peace and satisfaction and pleasure here in the hereafter. So the more in line that we bring ourselves with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires from us, would like from us, the more we're going to be at peace, both here and in the hereafter. Mawlana says the greatest sin is to fight against Allah Almighty. Therefore, the Prophet ﷺ says, the one who shoots his arrow against us is not from our nation. But it is not only for the one who puts himself on the enemy's side by sending his arrow against the Prophet's army. Rather, it has a very broad meaning to be against the Prophet. And if the Prophet likes something, to say, I don't like it. So you see this reference in the hadith, the one who shoots against us is not from our nation or from our ummah. But Mawlana Shaykh Nazim is saying this doesn't only apply to if there's an army who's shooting at you or shooting against the Prophet Muhammad, but people, if we don't like what the Prophet Muhammad, well, firstly, if we don't like the Prophet Muhammad, or we don't like the Prophet Muhammad, how he was, or his teachings, or his sunnah, we're also putting ourselves on the enemy's side. Many people do things today many Muslims do things today which are against how the Prophet Muhammad would have liked them to behave. Prophet Muhammad had the best adab, the best manners, and the best akhlaq. Prophet Muhammad was so respectful and dignified with everybody, even with his worst enemies. He still had respect and spoke to them in a way which was dignified and graceful, even with his enemies. Today, many Muslims don't even have respect for their friends, for the people they call friends. Well, if we don't even treat people who we call friends with respect and manners, I'm not saying, obviously, if you're good friends with someone, you banter, you joke about, you have fun. That's normal. I'm not saying we don't do that, but we know the limits. You know what limits? You don't do stuff to offend them deliberately. You don't insult them. And yet today, a lot of Muslims do these things. You don't rip them off, and scam them. This is not how you treat friends. Well, the Prophet Muhammad didn't even do that to his enemies. So this is a very, very important point. Mawlana continues and says, in everything, we have been ordered to take him as the most excellent example. Therefore, if anyone is against what the Prophet liked, it means that he is leaving the Prophet's ways, not following his ways perfectly. If anyone does this, it is also a kind of shooting of arrows against the Prophet's will and being against him in his desires. Even in his habits, a perfect follower of the Prophet must be in agreement with the Prophet's habits. Once the son of Sayyidina Umar, may Allah bless them both, was riding on his way to Hajj pilgrimage, going with people. Then he arrived at a place where there were two ways. One way was winding and the other way was straight. When he reached that fork, he turned and followed the winding way. Then his followers asked, why did you turn this way instead of going by that? You know, why did he go this winding way instead of going in a very straightforward way? I mean, it doesn't seem logical at first sight. But the son of Umar said, I saw beloved Muhammad arrive at this point and turn from here and then go on. And I like to follow his footsteps everywhere. That is a perfection for Muslims, for anyone who wants to be a perfect follower, because nur means light, lights every spot where the Prophet put his holy footsteps. But blind people do not even see the light of the sun. And the Prophet's light is more than the light of 100 suns. SubhanAllah. What a good point. Blind people do not even see the light of the sun. And the Prophet's light is more than the light of 100 suns. And how true is that? How true is money? And that's the thing, if people are blind, and it's not talking about blind people here who are, you know, unfortunately, you know, can't see. This is talking about blind people who are spiritually blind. It's like my dad used to say, people who can't see the wood for the trees. Some people just can't see anything, no matter how plain it is, no matter how obvious it should be. And they will not see it. May Allah have mercy upon them. Mawlana Shaykh Nazim continues and said, how could the son of Sayyidina Umar leave the Nur and go by another way? It's impossible. The Sahaba, the companions of beloved Muhammad saw his Nur, his lights, and followed them. Therefore, the Sahaba reached to the lights of the Prophet. So that everyone who follows the ways of the companions of Muhammad reaches to his Nur, to his light. Now we have been ordered to follow his ways, because in the ways of the Prophet we may find lights which make our way clear for us. As the sun makes clear for people their way, we are in need to find our way through the darkness of the future, through the lights of the Prophet. You can't find your way among the future's darknesses without his lights. Therefore, as much as you are able to be a real follower of your Prophet, you must acquire more lights. And as much as you acquire more lights, your future is going to be more clear for you. The ways to your destination are going to be more clear. See, we get blessings when we follow, when we learn about how the Prophet Muhammad was, when we learn about how he lived, how he treated people, how he organized himself, how he organized his community, how he conducted himself in all of his affairs. When we learn these things and start to put them into practice, we get more blessing that comes towards us, and we become a better human being. And this clears the way for us, as Mawlana is saying here. The lights are the lights of guidance, the lights of inspiration, the lights of showing us the way, how we should be living, what we should be doing, what things we should be caring more about and doing more about. Prophet Muhammad gave us an example that sows the seeds for all of these things. And so if we learn from that, then we will make our path clearer. Mawlana continues and says, everyone has a private destination, and you must make clear your way to your destination. And it is impossible for a person to make clear the way to his future or the way to his destination without taking a light from the Prophet ﷺ. The sun never shows you the way to your destination, and you are in need of another sun to make your way to your destination clear. The sun of prophethood. That is important. When you think about it, on a dark night, what do you take with you? I was going to say you take your torch with you, but actually today, it might not be a torch. It might be your mobile phone. And you put the light on your mobile phone, but it's still a torch. You know, whether you're using a phone or whether you're using an actual torch. But if it's dark, you're gonna need a light to light your way, to show you. I mean, that's why we have this metaphor. It's a metaphor in this example. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the way he led his life, the way he treated people, the way he handled very difficult and complicated situations, are inspiration for us. And that inspiration can show us the way, but we have to learn it. We have to take this on board. Otherwise we'll not make any benefit from it. And I've seen all too often, you know, people behave in ways very opposite to how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did things, and then claiming that they're following the Sunnah. Well, you know, there might be in a couple of small ways, but it's like the Sunnah goes beyond the length of your beard or the length of your thobe. Sunnah includes many things. Mawlana Shaykh Nazim continues and says that whoever goes against the Prophet's steps, sending his arrows against the Prophet's ways, is not going to receive light from the Prophet. Therefore, in every way in which the Prophet ﷺ is an example for us, we must be suited to being on his way, not being against his sunnah, not even in eating or in drinking or in habits. We must follow him, even in simple things. If you know what you are doing and yet you go against his sunnah, you lose his light. And inasmuch as something was liked by him, it was liked by his Lord Almighty. Remember, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the beloved of Allah. The beloved of Allah. So this means the way the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ lived and what the things which he did, Allah loved him. So he must have loved the way that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ lived. Inasmuch as something was liked by him, it was liked by his Lord Almighty. Because if Allah Almighty had not liked it, the Prophet ﷺ would not have liked it. That is impossible, because he was as his Lord wanted him to be in everything. Then how could our Prophet ﷺ consider being on a way other than the way his Lord wanted him to be on? Therefore, when anything, even if the customs of our Prophet ﷺ reaches us, we must keep it. But now, in our time, Muslims generally are losing the ways of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, most scholars and learned people and most Muslims are speaking about the customs or habits of the Prophet ﷺ, and they are saying it doesn't matter if we leave them. They are not worships, they are not prayers, saying we will keep only what the Prophet brought us as worships, as prayers. But for what he used to do as a custom, doesn't matter if we leave that. And if we follow new customs in eating, in drinking, in dressing, accommodation, yes, we may do as we like now. Yes, there is tolerance in Islam. but that is for dunya, for this world. If you are asking for Dar al-Akhirah, the eternal home, you must be closer to the life of the Prophet ﷺ. You must be more careful follower of the ways. So this is a point about, with Islam has flexibility in a lot of things, and even if someone's living their life quite differently, it doesn't mean we go around judging them. But at the same time, if we want to get closer to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, we should learn about how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ lived, how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ behaved, how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ went about his daily life. And it doesn't mean that we go back to a 7th century way of life in the 21st century. That would be foolish. But at the same time, those things which can be applied and we can do in this time, we should do. Not like just ignoring everything. And I always point out the most important sunnah is the way that the Prophet Muhammad lived, the values he lived by, the way he conducted himself. Some things like clothes will change from one country to another country. But the values a person lives by, the way they conduct themselves, their ideals, what they're trying to achieve and build within a society, these things are not something which is limited to a particular time and place. There might be a few details, but a lot of these things, these principles, they're eternal principles. I think honesty today is valued by all decent people. And honesty in the time of the Prophet Muhammad was valued by all decent people. Trustworthiness today is valued by all decent people. Trustworthiness in the time of the Prophet Muhammad was valued by all decent people. Courage is valued today, and courage was valued by the time of the Prophet Muhammad. So certain principles, certain values, they are eternal. They are always going to be valued. And even if how they're expressed alters a bit, but still, the basic principle remains. But Mawlana continues and says, Arabs are running after new fashions, and Turks also, Pakistanis also. They like to follow new fashions. Yes, everyone who comes to Western countries is affected by the new fashions, and they are saying, doesn't matter, doesn't matter. That is suitable only for beginners. Yet, alhamdulillah, those who are newly coming into Islam from Western countries are keeping the ways of the Prophet Muhammad firmly. Yes, we must keep them. We must not be against the Prophet, even in customs or in habits, because he always asked his nation to be the leader, not be a follower. You must be guides. You must be the first, not imitating others. No, you must be at the front and people must be following you. But everything we are making non-Muslims first. Then we are following them. And it is not suitable for us. If we have been honored by Islam and real faith, we must be first. You see, this is something that Mawlana Shaykh Nazim must have said this back in the 1980s, because this is the first book in this series. That's a collection of Sohbets throughout Mawlana Shaykh Nazim's life. And yet, this is still just as true today as when Mawlana said it, 40 years ago? We're still following behind. We're still not developing the things that we need to develop. I mean, the Prophet Muhammad, for instance, encouraged learning. Strongly encouraged learning to read and write. And then after you learn to read and write, to investigate things, to develop yourself, to develop your civilization. Yet today, which Muslim university in the Muslim world is leading the world? Is, you know, the rest of the world is going there to learn from them. But used to be. First university, first modernist university built in Europe was built in Spain when it was run by Muslims, inspired by Islam. Yet today, Muslims from around the world go to Western universities. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going to Western universities, but where are the ones in Muslim countries that come up to the standards of Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard and Princeton and Yale? These are all in Britain and America and Europe and other universities, like, you know, even China's, you know, Peking University in Beijing is also a famous university. Where are the ones in the Muslim world that can hold up their own to these Western institutions? Where are the new research and new developments? Mawlana Shaykh Nazim here is saying that as Muslims, we've been given guidance by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We've been given the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's not so we live in the 7th century, but so that we become leaders and guides. You know, people, they think they can guide people to Islam. How can you guide people to Islam? You can't even guide yourself and your own civilization. The people who come into Islam from the West, usually because they've read the Quran, because they're inspired by the message of Islam, but not so much by the Muslims. And I'm speaking from personal experience there, sadly. But this is something that can be worked on, it can be changed. It doesn't have to be like that. Mawlana Shaykh Nazim continued and says, what customs can be better than the customs of the Prophet ﷺ? But now we are following the desires of our egos, and we are saying to our egos, as you like. We are finding satisfaction in saying those are only customs, not worships. And we are not understanding that even the customs, the habits of the Prophet ﷺ are like worships. As much as we like following his customs, it is a kind of worship. Therefore, if the Prophet ﷺ said, I like this, and you say, I like it also, it is a kind of worship. And if he said, I don't like this, and you say, I also don't like that, it is a kind of worship. Because we know clearly that the Prophet ﷺ would never say for something, I like it, without his Lord making him say it. He says, my Lord made me like it. And if I like something, Allah Almighty made me like it. And when he dislikes something, you must know that his Lord dislikes that thing. Therefore, he disliked it. And you must follow them. That is perfection in following the Prophet ﷺ. Therefore, in the spiritual ways of Islam, Grand Sheikhs have always advised people, believers, saying, O mu'mins, O Muslims, you must follow someone. Because it is an order from your Lord Almighty, you must have an imam. O Muslims, you can't be without an imam. Imam means leader or guide. Not just someone who leads prayers. It goes beyond that. You can't be without a guide. That is the order of the Sharia, the order, the command of our Lord Almighty. And the Prophet ﷺ says, what his Lord Almighty orders him to say, you must have an imam. If you take an imam for your prayers, how can you not be in need of a guide for your life? Therefore, Grand Sheikhs are saying to believers, you must take someone as your guide. But you must look for someone who is very careful about keeping the Prophet ﷺ's sunnah, his ways. If you can find a person who is very careful in keeping the sunnah, follow him as much as you are able. As much as you can find a perfect person, you must follow him. If he is not perfect, it is useless. It is like a person down a well saying to a little boy, take my hand and pull me up from here, while he drags that boy into the well also. Ask that a more powerful one than you should take your hand and pull you out. Now, I feel what Mawlana is saying here is not the, none of us are perfect, as in perfect. But what Mawlana is alluding to here is if a person is just like you, they don't really know any more than you, they don't really practice any more than you, how can that person be your guide? Look for someone who is experienced, who has been where you are, who you see qualities in that person that are admirable. You can see that person has striven and become a better human being. And there's someone that you can learn from. But it's also to do with character and behavior, the way they conduct themselves, someone who is gentle, kind, honorable, courageous. You look for qualities like that, as well as the knowledge. Someone who is stronger than you in these things. Otherwise, as Mawlana is saying here, it's like a person who is already fallen into a well and asks for a boy for help and then pulls them in also. You want someone who can pull you up, not someone who can pull you down. Otherwise, what benefits are you going to derive from that person? That doesn't mean they have to be absolutely perfect, because they wouldn't be human if they were. But there's a degree of perfection about them that is you are still striving for. Such a person you can learn from and you can benefit from. There are always signs of the people who are on the right path. And Mawlana ends with, may Allah Almighty make us find such a person, such people, so that we may take benefit from them in order to be more perfect. If he is more perfect than we, his perfection will come on us also. Therefore, if we find such a perfect person, we must intend to be his followers. May Allah bless Mawlana Shaykh Nazim and his family, and grant that we may be people who stick to the ways of our sheikhs and to the ways of our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. May Allah accept our fasts and our prayers in this holy month of Ramadan. Forgive us our sins, grant us our means and needs, grant us support with these, any issues that we may be facing. Bless our families and accept all our fasts and our prayers and other religious devotions and good deeds. And overlook our sins and forgive them. For the sake of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali, Sayyidina Muhammadin wa barik wa salim, Sayyid Rabbi wa salim wa jami'an biyakhi wa musulin, wa alin kulin ajma'in, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen. May Allah bless you all. If you're in the United Kingdom, then I wish you all to have a very good evening. If you find benefit from these online live talks that I do on a Monday and on a Friday, and you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe to my Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channels so you can be kept up to date with my latest broadcasts. And if you're on Mondays at 2 p.m. at the University of Birmingham Chaplaincy, I want a drop-in session for students and staff from the University of Birmingham. So you're most welcome between 2 and 4 p.m. at the University of Birmingham. You can drop in and see me. And at 5, well, starting at 5 p.m., I'm there for a zikr, which I usually start about 6 p.m. at the University of Birmingham's Multi-Faith Chaplaincy. And if you're in the area, you're most welcome to join us. And you know, especially if you're students at university and you're interested. And you know, if you can't join us in person, then of course I do go live, and you can join in online. Afterwards, I upload my videos and stuff as well to my YouTube channel and to my website at paulsarmstrong.com. So if you're not already subscribed to these channels, please do. And I wish you all the very best. Have a wonderful weekend. And if you're in the UK, have a very good evening. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.